Okay, we're going to go ahead and get started, everyone. So welcome to the breakout session number 3. You all are in for a treat. We saved the best for last. And I hope you all have really had a spectacular day learning about native plants, why they're important, and are feeling the bug and the motivation to get some of these wonderful specimens in our gardens. So my name is Ashley Studholm. I'm the moderator for you all today. I'm with the Prince William Conservation Alliance. We were a co-sponsor of this wonderful symposium that you all are enjoying today. Two things I want to mention before we jump in. One, your name tags. We want to collect them and reuse them for next year. So I have this blue bag that's over here. If you can kindly just leave them for us, that would be wonderful. Another thing is we have a bunch of lunches left over. So if anyone would like to take an extra lunch to have a snack later on or to bring home for a loved one, please feel free to pick one up and take it with you as you exit the building. That would be terrific. So we're good with everyone can hear me? Okay. Got to make sure that the online folks can hear me too, because sometimes I can't tell. So we are here to learn about garden maintenance, which is a key component. And we heard, you've probably been hearing that a little bit sprinkled throughout the sessions for today. And here we have Nancy Berlin that will take us through some of that. And Nancy Berlin, after 17 years as coordinator of the Prince William Master Gardener Program, Nancy established a native plant design business, Gentle Landscaping, and has helped clients in Fairfax, Fauquier, Spotsylvania, and Prince William to add native plants to their landscapes. She studied at Virginia Tech Graduate Studies in Natural Resources, is a certified horticulturalist, and a certified nutrient planner, and a level 2 Chess Bay landscape professional plus riparian and design. She is a frequent speaker for community groups and is a lifelong native of Northern Virginia. Please help me welcome Nancy Berlin.
Can you hear me okay? All right. Well, welcome. Thank you for sticking around for the last session. That light is really bright. So I'm going to take a little different tact for maintenance. So if you don't get the step-by-step, this is what you do in this season, this is what you do in the next season, bear with me. That'll come toward the end, but I think there's some really important things that we need to talk about philosophically first, about making sure that you pick the right plants first based on some really important considerations, many of which beautifully have been stated by your other speakers. Plant communities, competition. Anyway, so let's get started and let's see here. On.
That was my fault. Try now.
There we go. So this is my plan. To talk about a little bit of background, a few definitions, so that I don't say a word continually and you don't know what I'm talking about. Plant communities, I think Charles Smith probably did a fabulous job as always if you went to his, so I'm going to touch on that again. Plant habits, and some people like to call them personalities. I think that's a little bit anthropomorphic, but that might help you think about it. Plant combinations that work. Okay, that's what we want, really, to help minimize maintenance. And then down and dirty maintenance best practices. And then I have some resources listed at the end and time for questions, hopefully. Oh. The principles that I'm going to talk about apply to any size landscape. pollinator garden, edge habitat, riparian area, meadow. It's applicable to all. It may not be applicable to a lot of acreage. So anybody have a lot of acreage? Okay, then we're good. Disturbed can mean anything from cultivation, any kind of traffic, foot, pet, vehicular, anything that disturbs the soil, wind, rain, erosion, sedimentation. So if you hear me say disturbed, then that's where I'm coming from on that. The plants noted in the presentation, I think exclusively are those that are listed in the Digital Atlas of the Flora of Virginia for Prince William County or the Plant Nova Natives website. Okay, so if you're from a different region of Virginia, know that you can go to your local Plant Nova Natives site. They have that for other regions, or the Digital Atlas to determine what your plant communities are. And a matrix, can somebody shut that door? A matrix is a combination of plants that are compatible. And I think that's the biggest key, deciding which plants are compatible to create a lower maintenance garden. So you see where I'm coming from a little bit, okay? Can native plants be taken care of with a reasonable amount of effort? Yes. But most people come to me for a design and they don't want any maintenance, and I have to, squelch that right away. It can reduce the input, reduce upkeep, but you have to select carefully. In general, native plants don't need pruning, they don't need fertilization, they don't need soil amendments unless there's extenuating circumstances. They need establishment, irrigation, and that could be 2 or 3 years. Depending on the plant. They don't need mowing, and there's no disease or insect management. We want the insects to eat them. But they do require appropriate maintenance timed at the right time. So just a cost comparison, this is nothing that I want to dwell on, but turf grass costs a lot to install, a lot to maintain. And mowing is really getting expensive too. I don't mow at all anymore. I used to weed whack. I don't even weed whack anymore. But a native plant design is not cheap, and installation and purchase is not cheap. Plant Nova Natives says it's about $6 to $12 per square foot for the plants. So a few things about maintenance. So using advanced planning, that's what we've already covered. Decide how tidy do you need it to be. Do you live in an HOA? Do you live in a I don't care kind of neighborhood like I live in? Evaluate how much time are you willing to work? So I send out a questionnaire to my clients. How much time are you willing to put into this? And that really makes a big difference in what I'm going to recommend to them. Decide if you can delegate. Can you afford to delegate or hire somebody? Consider adding more plants. More plants are, of course, going to be more expensive, but adding more plants gives you more coverage and less invasion by weeds and invasives. Routinely scout, just take time to walk in your yard and look and see what's working, what's not, where the bare spots are, where the wet spots are. Keep reassessing, and then prioritize with a maintenance schedule. So my clients get a maintenance Excel spreadsheet that they can print off as part of their landscape plan. So this is what you do in early season. This is what you do mid-season. This is what you do in early fall. Because I think that's all part of it. And then what are your goals? Habitat, aesthetics, everything. And you'll hear these 3 terms thrown around a lot: sustainable landscaping, adaptive management, naturalistic planting. So we're going to take a look at these real quick. So naturalistic planting, this is the High Line. It is planted in New York City along an old railroad bed. And this is an example of naturalistic planting. It emulates nature. It looks like a person had a light touch on it, that it just kind of evolved that way. Well, not true, but that's what it's made to look like. It's diverse and species rich. If you saw if you talk with listen to Sam Droege, then you know about the importance of that diverse and species richness. It appears that the plants are managing themselves. Again, not true. They do have people taking care of this, and it is going through succession. It started out as a very very rural or pioneer-based garden. It does have minimal input, though. Now, sustainable just refers to an action that puts no undue pressure on the whole, that it doesn't take a lot of mowing, doesn't take a lot of pruning. You picked it carefully so that it grows where it wants to grow, and it doesn't put a lot of drain on your resources. So those both sound good, right? And adaptive management. And here's pretty much where I come from. This is a land management tool that you learn in natural resources. And it's based, as a designer, it's based on some uncertainty. I don't know everything about how a plant is going to act. What acts in one way in my yard acts in a different way in another, or the plant moves itself to a new location. So there is uncertainty when we have a naturalistic or a native landscape. And so it's always evolving, and you're questioning and you're observing. You're out with your glass of wine, walking around the yard, trying to figure out whether, this is, do I like that? Or do I want to do this? And then you forget by the next day. But Cornell Botanical Garden, this is an interesting quote about adaptive management. So adaptive management just says changing as you learn more, okay? So how about we have a sustainable, naturalistic landscape that uses adaptive management, okay? I guess that's what I'm aiming for when I do a design or when I am in my own yard. So a traditional landscape, and when I started in the field about 20 years ago, the way it worked was the landscape designer made a plan, and that plan was planted, maintained that way, and the plan looked the same at the end of 10 years as it did when you first put it in. It's not that way anymore because we have an ecosystem here. We have an evolving landscape that is experiencing succession, and some of the plants' personalities are taking over and others are dropping back. Monocultures were more common back then, and the maintenance was the same. That was why it was easier to hire a landscape company, because they knew what to do. Every spring after the azaleas bloom, we cut them, we do a careful pruning. We only take out a third, So it's different now, though. Okay, with native plants, it's different. And an adaptive landscape, it's a dynamic ecosystem, as we said, and we're evaluating and we're adjusting to changes. We're questioning and learning. This puts a big responsibility on you as the grower, but it's fun, and you never stop learning about it. It also acknowledges site-specific information, and Stephanie Johnson's talking about site, so make sure you listen to her class online. And what is your site telling you? There has to be good communication between parties. And that is really where we are right now. It's difficult to find a landscape company that really knows how to manage native plants right or well. So do you have an HOA? How many have an HOA? So your native plants have a different responsibility, particularly if you want to be an ambassador for native plants, that you need to make them look tidy. You don't want them flopping over. You want maybe plants around them to support the ones that tend to flop. You want tidy, maybe some mulched areas. I know mulch can be a dirty word among native plant people, but it's important in some circumstances until you get a fill in, and if you want it to look tidy. And you have to have areas where there's no snakes or spiders or things that the people that really don't like that kind of stuff, if they're taking a walk around, that they don't have to come in contact with, but they can still admire the plants. So it has to have user acceptability. So what kind of landscape do you have? This is where you come in and do the site assessment. And I'm going to encourage you to identify a reference landscape. And the way you do that is you find a natural area that's close to your home. It might be, if you're in Heritage Hunt, it might be Conway Robinson. If you're in Montclair, it could be Prince William Forest Park. And in my case, I'm right on a floodplain on the Bull Run. And so I'm in a Mesic hardwood forest floodplain. And I have mostly oaks and beech, and that tells me what plant communities I need to use in my landscape. Okay, and in Virginia we have, the mountain, the Piedmont, and the coastal plain, and we are kind of on that cusp, as Keith Tomlinson was talking about. It's divided, and this is from Prince William Conservation Alliance. Thank you, Ashley. We're divided into 2 physiographic regions in Prince William County, with the dividing line being 95 and coastal plain being to the east of that. 80% though of Prince William County is Piedmont, but different types of Piedmont. What's true, Mid-County is very different from Bull Run Mountain. So determining your reference community, look at the forest composition of your reference community, and that's the kind of plant communities. Now, we do have disturbed soils in our suburban areas. The soil has been upturned, scraped off, but you can still work toward amending that soil and rebuilding for some restoration, like Sam Droege was talking about. So knowing your plant community and your soil type and the moisture levels is going to tell you what to plant. For example, a natural prairie, and a prairie is just predominantly grass, predominantly dry. A meadow is more wet, predominantly herbaceous. Okay, but these are four plants from a Piedmont prairie. Okay, you plant these in an area that is in the Piedmont, that it tends to be dry, not near a wetland. These will do really well. They are a community of plants that like each other. They're compatible. So, yeah, okay, narrowleaf mountain. Okay, I did label this. Ursanka has a wonderful resource online, a compendium that Matt Bright has put together. Excellent. You can search by type of forest, type of reference community, what's near your home, find out what describes it best, and look for the plants that fall into that community. And they're going to grow well. It's a fantastic resource. So I'm going to make some assumptions that you want to minimize maintenance, right? Because we're not getting any younger. We want to plan for long-term performance of it, and we want to choose the plant committee based on, we don't want to waste our money by putting in plants that aren't going to do well, okay? So we want to look at plant habits. Now, bear with me on this. This is theoretical. It's from some research that was done in the 70s. And Karen Rexroad, if you know her from Windy Hill Plant Farm, she introduced me to this about 20 years ago. And I'll tell you what, I've been thinking about it ever since, and I finally get a chance to share this with somebody. It's pretty exciting, but it does have a strong theoretical basis, so bear with me on this. First, we want to layer plants, okay? Is that a given? That layering plants will give you more coverage, and it'll be more like a natural landscape. This is the Healing Garden at Innova. Prince William put it in. Josh Jeter-Clark, landscape designer, and I designed it. And if you go over there today, it doesn't look like that. There's a lot of overlap. And I tell you what, I need to train the landscape group that does it, because they're not really well versed. Some of the stuff needs to be cut back. It's predominantly native, not exclusively. but you're choosing a number of well-mannered perennials, because it was right smack in front, of the hospital. We didn't want something really crazy and wild, and use vegetative layering. And this is Leah Pickering. Is she here? Anyway, she made this wonderful graphic that's available to Audubon ambassadors, and it talks about layers and what critters use each layer. And so that is probably your end goal, but we're a ways away from that when we're first starting. But I think that this shows you what we're aiming for. So clumping perennials, just a tip, things that, can you think of a clumping perennial? No, you're tired. Maidenhair fern. These are the white cream violets, asters clump and then fall over, and goldenrod. And so, well, goldenrod tends to be way out there too. But they tend to be tidier. They tend to be easier to keep tidier for like an HOA. Blue-eyed grass, this is Increum. And Swasa perennials make for easier maintenance too. This is one of my landscape designs for a client in Dale City who applied for VCAP. And this is her front yard. We were going to make an island and incorporate some of her non-native trees in it, but then put Swasa perennials in so that there was little room in between for weeds to go. And it was very, very clear what was supposed to be there and what was not. Now, this will evolve over time. Hopefully it will fill in the whole area. I haven't told her that yet. I'll be dead by then. Block paint planting is really a big topic. So Nigel Dunnett, if you've ever heard of him, he did the meadow out at for Queen Elizabeth's golden thing in the moat around the castle. And so he does a lot of classes. He's British. And so all the plants he's talking about, I don't really know the plants he's talking about, but the theory of doing things in blocks, so much easier to maintain. He is delightful to listen to. Garden Masterclass is a group of mostly European, British designers, but the classes have been so wonderful. But again, they're not Northern Virginia natives. So you always have to convert in your head to what would work there. Anyway, this is one of his flow classes about how you plant in groups, and then you look how your eye goes through. And it's just a new way of, it's not a new way of looking. It's a natural way of planting. And so I think it's very, very applicable to lower maintenance gardens. But what's going on under the ground? It's not enough to be pretty, right? Okay, and so what's going on under the ground? We got to consider the plant growth strategies and what's going on. For example, Solidago rugosa. I thought it would be a good idea to put it in my front meadow. And I have a, pretty wild and free front meadow, but oh man, it has roots like this. You cut the top off and the rhizomes go across the yard. And I really do regret planting it. It is a pollinator magnet. It is beautiful in the fall. It looks stunning with asters, but it is not easy to maintain. It takes a lot of my time. So I should have put it in my backyard meadow where I didn't have to worry about it and it could just do its thing. I also want to preserve diversity. And, I don't want my whole meadow to be Solidago. I want it to have lots of different colors and shapes of plants. So how roots grow really has a lot to do with how easy they are to maintain. You have the fibrous roots that just go down. You have a taproot type. You have rhizomes. Here's the taproot. Here's the rhizomes and the stolons. They're a little harder to maintain, but they form a very nice mat where weeds don't get through. And there's some stolons. And here's another example of the different types of root systems. So you have to consider what's going on down under the ground that's deterring weeds, but not making more work for myself, which is a totally different way of thinking about planting and choosing plants. And then you have annuals, that just are non-clonal, sexual reproduction. And so they're producing all that shoot growth, and then they're dropping seeds, which generally is not, except for partridge pea, which can be a little, little crazy. But plants with a single root, think about plants with that single fibrous root, like that, like heuchera, like the blanket flower. They tend to be a little more short-lived. I wouldn't want to invest a lot of money in these, even though they might make a really nice fill-in to keep weeds down. I wouldn't want a whole garden full of these because I want my plants to last. So making wise predictions can create more stable and predictable plantings. So this woodland aster, we were talking about this one at lunch, Eurybia divaricata. In my woodland garden, I think I only put one plant in, but now I have like 12. But it's taken over a nice big area in my woodland garden where stiltgrass used to go. And it has nice big leaves so that it doesn't let a lot of the filtered sun in. And when I pair it with cranesbill geranium, or the Geranium maculatum, it makes a nice vegetative mat in my shady area. Okay, and that's because of the way the roots grow. So some perennials are long-lived, but they take a while to get going. So if you're going to start planting a garden, you might want to start with these. Okay, Veronicastrum, Culver's root, love it. Baptisia just takes its sweet time. Oh my goodness. And they act sort of like shrubs almost, but they put them in first, let them take up as much room as they want, and then plant around them. And then you've got a little island there with a nice matrix. Remember that word? So these are, I'm sorry, did you want me to go back? Yeah. That's from my yard, that one. Aruncus is like a subshrub too. It's an herbaceous, but so these are not natives. I'm just going to tell you right off. These are natives, and they're mostly annuals, and they're in Vienna, Austria. And I think this is brilliant because look at that matrix. There's no weeds getting in there. And so Vienna, Austria bought all these seeds in the same, and every traffic island in the city of Vienna has this beautiful little meadow that they don't have to take care of. They don't have to mow it. They mow it once a year probably. But it's gorgeous. So we can do this with native plants. So this is my front yard matrix. No comments. It's not gorgeous, but we've got Ridgeron, and that's I don't know the common name. Fleabane. Okay, so it's everywhere, and it forms a nice little rosette. So it's taken up space even now as we speak. It's growing. This is Monarda. It has spreads by rhizomes. It does not like a lot of competition. Tradescantia, and it's more of a clumper. And this is Coreopsis lanceolata, not a native to Northern Virginia. And Achillea. Achillea forms a nice ferny, flat. Anyway, so this is one matrix, and it's working pretty well, I have to say. It's not for your normal HOA though, right? Okay. So this is a Dutch designer, and this is what I envisioned. But this is a matrix too, and it uses block planting. And these are not native to Northern Virginia, but you could do this. You're getting the idea that you plant in groups and you try to make the matrices meet each other. Excuse me. So this is Spencer Williams, and he's at the Teaching Garden. And this is his rock garden. And again, these are not all natives, but Spencer has created a very nice matrix here. And he has to weed, I have to say. I sat next to him in the last, and he's got just a really interesting matrix of a lot of different greens and stuff. And he has less maintenance than some of the other beds. I'll say that. So, okay, so this is a theoretical from 1977. Grimes, and this is started with Karen Rexroad. You can blame her. But all the European designers right now are starting to talk about this, which is really thrilling. Nigel Dunnett put it in his classes. And I'm like, oh. So there are three personalities. Okay, we'll just say personalities. Competitors. They're the ones that show up. They get a jump on things. They have large, quick growth, big leaves. Can you think of one? Rebecca lanceolata. Anybody? A cup plant. Compass plant. They show up and they show up big. And then there's the stress avoiders, and they always have some kind of structure in the roots where they can store energy and food. So if things aren't going well, they have something stored for later. And those are like violets, irises. They have that storage unit. And so, hey, it's not a good year for violets, but given the right amount of moisture and the right amount of not really hot sun, they're going to do really well the next year, or maybe the next spring. And then there's pioneers, and a lot of pioneers are our weeds, and they occur when things are disturbed. They're ephemeral. They're here today, and then they send out a ton of seeds, and then they disappear. So we don't want a lot of ephemerals, but we want some. But if we had all ephemerals, that would be a horrible maintenance problem. If we all had all competitors, oh my gosh, that's my goldenrod, okay? And if we had all stress tolerators and conditions weren't good, we wouldn't have. So we need a mixture of these. So this is, I'll show you a couple diagrams for the different kinds of learning styles. This is, the more disturbed, the more rudderol you have. The more competition, the less rudderals you have. The more stress, the less stressed, the more stress tolerators you have. Okay, that's just another way of looking at the same information. So disturbance, again, can mean any of these things that we already talked about. Stress can mean any of these things: too much water, not enough water, cold, hot, increase in salt. Competition can mean these things: neighboring plants are taking nutrients, space, water, sunlight. So stress and disturbance are the two main driving forces. And this is a college class where they took the CSR, competitors, stress avoiders, and rudderals, and they had the students, knowing what they knew about those plants, kind of group them. And you can do this. You can go out to your yard tomorrow and say, oh, I bet that's a competitor. Okay, so competitors, here's a Rebecca lanceolata. Be big, take up space. This is just a review, so it's feeling a little more comfortable. Here's a few more competitors. Be big, take up space, have large leaves. They have lots of biomass, definitely. Ostrich ferns. Have you ever seen the roots on those things? Oh my gosh. White snake root and yarrow. So again, just a different way of looking at it. Here's two competitors in my yard fighting it out. There's that solidago, and then the Symphenotrichum oblongifolium, the aromatic aster. Okay, and that's okay with me. Okay, that works. Stress tolerators. Here's some Sedum tornatum is a stress tolerator. It's not doing really well in one area of my yard, but I'm hoping it'll bounce back this summer. It thrives in high stress, low disturbance. So I don't want to disturb that area. It has defense mechanisms. It's slow growing. Many of them are evergreen. Do you have Sedum tornatum? It's a sedum that likes the shade, native sedum. And here's some other stress tolerators. Okay, they have storage structures. Trout lily has a little corm, I think a corm, Tiarella. These are my trout lilies, and they're not stressed enough, so they're not forming any flowers. Blue violets, a stress, so that's my lawn in the spring in one area of my yard. So they have long-lived leaves in a storage structure. Beard tongue is a good example, and it has those nice leaves. Whoa, nice basil leaves. Now a rudderel or a pioneer. They like disturbed areas. They have lots of seeds. Pussy toes. I see pussy toes growing in parking lots. You know, it likes disturbed areas. High growth rate, lots of offspring. Here's a rudderel meadow with a lot of weeds. So a lot of weeds. So we really don't want a ton of rudderels. Common evening primrose. If you got that, you got them everywhere. Produce lots of offspring. So the Highline started as a, rudderel design, and it's had succession. Remember the other picture I showed you of the Highline? So all of these are rudderels except one. Which one is not a rudderel? I'm saying, no, the Rebecca is a rudderel because it acts kind of like an annual almost. It's this aster, frost aster. Yeah, because think how its roots grow. They're more of a network. Rudderels naturalize, stress avoiders avoid, and competitors evade. So which native plant type do you think might require the most hours of maintenance? And darn it, Karen Rexroad had this quantified in money terms, and she can't remember what it was, and I couldn't find it anywhere. But I think we can make some good guesses. Which one do you think? Rudderel, stress tolerator, or competitor? It sort of depends on the situation, but yeah, I think rudderel probably. But these are the things to take into consideration when you're choosing these. Do you water regularly? Gosh, I hope not. But that's a good place for competitors to go. Did you clear an area? Rudderels are going to come in unless you put something else in. Are you planning minimal irrigation? Stress tolerators are going to do fine. And if it's a good year. And when you plan a plant community design to minimize your maintenance, you need probably some kind of percentage of each, right? And this is, I mean, I think you could quibble with these percentages, but this is what I'm aiming for in my front yard so that I don't kill myself. I mean, I already had 2 hip replacements. You know, I don't really want to spend my life taking out things that shouldn't be there. I want a matrix of plants that will be stable, fairly stable and evolving. So here's my front yard. I have some non-native irises there. And I don't have a lot of weeds. This is my front yard at the end of the summer where the competitors have taken over. And so I made a chart of what I had and what each category each one was so that I could figure out, okay, how can I minimize the amount of maintenance I have? So in planning a matrix, here are a few combinations that worked well. So a matrix for sun could be these, and I put C, S, and R next to it to show you competitor, rudderel, stress avoider. So here's a matrix, another matrix for sun. I have this one in the backyard. So, it's all about walking around and observing, what is working. Here's another, oh, I'm sorry. These are the matrix for sun. They look pretty nice together too. Okay, here's another matrix for sun, Veronicastrum, from my front yard, Monarda, Didyma, Zizia, Anemone. Anemone is Canadensis or Virginiana is a great ground cover for filling in the gaps in the matrix, excuse me. So here's a sad winter matrix. So I went out and looked in the yard. Okay, what's coming up here that I can predict? So I've got this, and that's Rudbeckia. And I've got cranesbill geranium. That's that weedy geranium that I let grow. And then I've got Tradescantia coming up. And you see I have space in between, but these are going to fill in. And then Erigeron, that fleabane, and Solidago, always Solidago. Okay, so it's got good potential. It doesn't look great right now, but by spring and early summer, I'm going to have a matrix of plants that are fairly easy to take care of, except that Solidago. So here's a shady matrix in my backyard. Maidenhair fern and columbine and golden ragwort and bluebells. And you can see that putting these together, these are all plants for floodplain, Piedmont, reference community, Bull Run area. And I do have space in between, and I have to use wood chips occasionally, and I do have to weed, and there does get still grass in there. But you can see how you can start to think in terms of, okay, how am I going to reduce this time I'm spending? Not that we don't love it. So here's a matrix for shade that gives you that balance of the 20, 30%. Here's another matrix. Did I get that one? I'm sorry. Do you want that? Sorry. Another matrix, okay, for shade, the frost aster or whitewood aster, violet, and the ferns and the geranium. Now, we always have to deal with invasive plants, right? So I go out every day, I take my dog out, and every day I find invasive plants, every single day. So, don't let the winter fool you. They're there and they're coming up. Okay, so many are pioneers or rudderals, or many of them are competitors with big leaves. Okay, so get on them early is what I'm saying. And management is inevitable. I use this for managing woodies. It's a sponge applicator, and I don't use any other herbicides, but I do use this, and I do a cut and then dab. That way I use a very minimal amount. I don't get it on myself. And I can control it really easily. It's just a sponge applicator. I get it from Naisma, Naisma, but there's other sources for it. And then there's this kind of sponge applicator too. I usually use triclopyr for woodies or glyphosate without any added ingredients, just dabs, okay, for herbaceous. So now this is what you thought you were coming for. These are now that you've gotten through the theoretical and you've thought, okay, I need to make sure I'm putting in the right matrix. And I have a reference community. And I'm choosing a plant community that's consistent with my soils and where I live in the county, okay? Now you've done all that and you've gotten ready, you're getting ready to go to the garden center, and you've decided what you're gonna get, and you're gonna try some different matrices. Now you get them home and you have to take care of them, right? And we've tried to minimize that. So these are the basic stuff. Disturb the soil as little as possible, as you know, because the weed seeds are just always present. Choose the plants carefully, leave debris, leaves, we all know this. Get the weeds early. The bittercress is already going to flower. So get it now before it sends those seeds into your eyes. Mulch or ground cover, I use a lot of wood chips. If I clear a place of invasives or weeds, I put down wood chips until I can get to it. Because I don't have time to do this twice. Shrubs versus perennial shrub. I'm putting a lot of, I have one client now that wood chipped her whole front yard. I came over there and I'm like, oh my gosh. So we're going to do a lot of shrubs because there's no way she can keep up with herbaceous plants. You know, we need structure first. Shade out and compete with weeds. So meadows, if you have a meadow, anybody have a meadow? Okay, so you're going to mow it, you know, mow it maybe once a year. Okay. Make sure you prepare the site right. Realistic expectation, it's going to have weeds. It's going to have succession of woody plants. Make sure you cut the woodies out. Choose the right seed mix. Don't buy meadow in a can. Use online sources, including the Ursanga for, we don't have a lot of natural meadows in the Piedmont. We have mostly prairie or it doesn't lend itself as easily to a meadow. Control the invasives and cut the woodies out. Mowing depends on your weather and the seed mix. 1/3 annually is what Doug Tallamy recommends. That way you're leaving some stems up and leaving the stems for, he says the 50-degree rule is an urban myth. That's what Doug Tallamy says. So leave the stems as long as you can tolerate them. If I have to take the stems out, I bunch them up in a group and I put them back by my compost, standing straight up, you know, against the fence. If I have to take them out, because some things seed too much, I have to get it. So, but I leave as many as I can. Make sure you prepare the site for a meadow well first. That is the key. You're not going to get rid of all the weeds, but the solarization and occultation, either with black plastic or clear plastic that you reuse, and not cardboard, because cardboard has forever chemicals in it, or wood chips to prepare your meadow first. Okay, in the fall, avoid mowing because that's when the seed production and that's when the birds come to get the seeds. Assess the coverage, and maybe you don't need to overseed in the spring. You got to kind of see how it looks. In the winter, scout for invasives every week. And leave the seed heads unless you're editing out competitors. They're like that Solidago. Not that I don't love Solidago, okay? In the spring, again, mow 1/3. This is a great book on wasps that will show you some of the places that wasps overwinter. Think of leaves like a resource. Plants will come up from 4 inches of leaves. They'll still oak their, I mean, if a daffodil can come up, these plants can come up through the leaves. There are, I don't need to say this because Sam Dredge, 4,000 species of native bees and 70% of them nest in the ground. In the meadow, in the summer, it's too hot. Go inside, rest. Avoid mowing. You can take a walk around in the evening with a glass of wine and remove the invasives. It's less painful that way. Don't mow until the growing season is over. Okay, for a bioswale, same as any garden, okay? Assess how it's functioning. A bioswale is just a ditch with conservation landscaping in it. Look for signs of erosion. Make sure you replace where the erosion is occurring. Maybe replace with something different, with maybe a rhizomatous root that will stabilize instead of wash out. Yeah? 5 minutes, thank you. Replace the mulch or remove the woodies in the trash. Rain garden, this is Westminster at Lake Ridge. We put a rain garden in there. You just need to make sure that the channel is clear, that it's functioning properly, water isn't pooling more than 48 hours, that the mulch doesn't, does it need replacing? Are any plants diseased or need clearing out? Before you install, make sure you have sited it correctly and chosen the right plants. That's pretty self-explanatory. Small pollinator garden, no different from anything we've already talked about. Irrigate new plantings weekly. Most people forget to do that. Collect seeds in the fall, leave the stems. Chelsea chop, floppy perennials. You know about Chelsea chop? If you go to Google Chelsea chop fine gardening, and they have a nice chart of what responds well to a chop around May 1st or mid-May. Yeah, mid-May, probably. So that they'll bunch out rather than falling off, flopping over. Woody plants, the pruning, 3Ds, prune those anytime that's disease, damaged, dead. Thank you. Correct timing of the pruning, make sure you make your cut right. Ask Master Gardeners if you don't know, give the help desk, Master Gardener at pwcgov.org a call. Pruning best practices, native bees like these holes in your trees, so leaf snags. Put your trees in an island so they don't have to be alone with turf around them. They won't do well with turf around them. Get this bittercress now. It's already got little white flowers on it. Keep your bare soil covered. Most weeds are rudderals. Okay, this is my cute grandson. So here we are using some wood chips, and garden professors have a lot of good information on using wood chips. Wood chips are free. You go to chipdrop.com or .org, one of the two. And you can get a free load of wood chips. It's a lot of wood chips, okay? I'm just warning you, it fills up my whole driveway. So you have to count the cost of that. You might want to spring for some mulch. I'm cheap, so I always get the free wood chips. Irrigation takes 1 to 2 years to establish woodies, okay? So make sure people would come into our extension office and we'd say, how often do you irrigate? And they'd go, oh, the rain did it. And we're like, we haven't had any rain. Okay, water deeply, less often, once a week, very deeply, okay? Calibrate your irrigation. Here's a few tips for irrigation. Check with your finger. Look at the plant. If it droops in the afternoon, that's probably normal drooping. If it droops in the morning, it probably will need irrigation. Water the ground, not the leaves, so you keep disease off the leaves. Scout for plant problems. There's our extension horticulture help desk for the extension office. If you have a problem, you can send them a picture. I'm retired. Sanitation, just scout around for anything that looks slimy, diseased, and just snip that off. Okay, you don't. That's what concerns me about leave the leaves and leave the stems. That's gonna proliferate disease. So just take a walk around. Okay, salt management, sweep it up. Okay, we haven't had much of that this winter. Use safe products. These are some salt tolerant natives that I plant near my road. Native grasses are good. You can cut those back when the new growth is starting to come. I leave them as long as possible. And when I see the green starting to come up, then I give it a cut back. And usually I make sure that I save all the seeds and put them in the compost pile, so they're still available for birds. Every client that I see gets a maintenance checklist at the end of their design, and it's printable. It's an Excel spreadsheet. They can take it. In this season, I need to do this. In this season, I need to do this. So they can take it out, or they can give it to a contractor and say, this is all I want. I don't want you spraying. I don't want you pruning at weird times. This is what I want. Can you do this or not? There's one filled out. This is a sample. So if you're hiring somebody, use that checklist and make sure you monitor their work. So you got to apply what you learned, plant communities, reference community, picking the right root structure, forming a matrix, planting in drifts, and getting a balance of competitors, stress avoiders, and rudderals. There's, oh, this is on Plant Nova Natives. I forgot that was there for the Chelsea chop. That's a new thing, I think. So summing it up, we just did that. Adaptive management, what's working, what's not working. This is a great resource, the DCR Natural Communities. I think Keith Tomlinson talked about it. That has the groups of plants for each type of land. I think that's all repetitive. So this is Lurie Garden in Chicago. I don't think it's exclusively native, but it's Pete Ondoff's, one of his many block planting areas. And you don't have to have this, but on a smaller scale, this is what we're looking for, a matrix of plants that repels weeds and that is fairly simple to take care of, but is beautiful. Larry Weiner has some good stuff. He started applying the CSR stuff from the Grimes Triangle. If you get to take one of his classes, he's using that. Homegrown National Park has some good matrix groups of plants in it. And here's some references that will be available. Some of them more philosophical than others. And this is one of my favorite books, A Gentle Plea for Chaos by Mirabelle Ulcer. There's no end in a garden. It's always kind of evolving. It's like music. It's got a composer and a goal, but it's always on the move. And we have to be able to adaptively manage that and enjoy it as it happens. Okay. And there's my contact information. I have some business cards up here should you like one, and that's it. Thank you. Did I finish?
Thanks,
You're welcome.
Nancy. That was terrific. So we do have a couple of minutes for questions, and like we've done previously, we'll bounce back and forth between questions here in the audience, and then I'll be checking the Zoom. Nancy, you can field the questions, but just repeat the
All right.
questions so our Zoom listeners can hear what is being asked.
All right. Yes. You will this is all going to be recorded, so you can listen to it as many times as you want. Yes.
On my side hill, I think the birds.
Yes.
Before they drop seed. In order to get the roots out, I would pretty much have to remove a bunch of other stuff.
Yeah.
Do you recommend?
Okay, the question was Solidago, she cut the heads off. It was on a hillside. If it's on a hillside and it's holding the soil, leave it. Is somebody complaining? Yeah, it's wonderful for erosion control, I have to say. And you can cut the heads off, but when you cut the heads off, the rhizomes go even further. I mean, okay.
I have a question from online. Are there any native plants that we should avoid because they are too competitive or aggressive? And Nancy Veers likes to say native plants are assertive,
Yeah,
not
yeah.
aggressive. So I'll just plug that.
I'd say that there's probably a place for that native plant. I don't think that there's any native plant that I would say, oh, absolutely never plant that. It's just the right plant, the right place. Excuse me? Bittercress? I'm hand pulling it. Yeah. Just get it. It's the flower, okay? The flowers are forming now. Go home and do it today. She asked how I was getting rid of the bittercress. Yes.
Nowadays, encouraging everybody to go out and plant oaks. Oaks are struggling in this area, but if you encourage oak plant, I just went out and picked up a couple acres myself, but what's your view on oaks and longevity, what's going on there?
Well, the question was, what's my view on oaks with Doug Talamy recommending planting oaks? And, you know, certainly a keystone plant, important. I say go for it, plant them anyway. I have a non-native viburnum in my front yard, but all these oaks have come up around it. So I'm going to cut that non-native viburnum down after it blooms this spring and let the oaks fill it in. And I'll be dead by the time they, you know, are mature. But you know, I feel like it's important. And, you know, who knows what it will be like. I mean, I'm sure it's so complex what's happening with oaks. Right, Julie? You know, drought and disease and so many insults, right?
Yeah, I'd say, one reason not to plant oaks, they're an extremely important part of our ecosystem. And we don't know what's gonna happen with science and dealing with some of that oak climate in the future. So most of the issues with the oaks are really mature oaks. So that you might not have problems for 40, 50 years.
And we won't even know. But we will have done our part.